After 2 countries and 81 days on the road, Mexico is in our rearview mirrors, and the winding roads of Central America are ahead of us. Our Spanish is a little less rocky and our clothes a little dirtier. Where did we leave off exactly? Ah, that's right. The Mexican border, about 7,000 miles and countless speed bumps ago, back when I still had that mustache. We woke up this morning at 5 to cross the border because we heard that we should go across as early as possible. We got to the border, they looked over the car and everything was fine. But then they said we had to come back at 8 because no one was there to accept any taxes for the vehicle. So much for blasting through Tecate and into Mexico. We are hanging out here at this park until people show up so we can pay these unknown taxes. Welcome to Mexico! But what would Mexico have in store for us? What could we expect in this country that we had been warned about time and time again? Would it be as unsafe and treacherous as we were told? If that were the case, how could we ever expect to get out the other side alive? We were a little nervous. That was overshadowed by the fact that we had finally made it to Latin America. None of us were really sure where to go from here, and that was the best part. Sweeping vistas, open roads with unregulated speed limits, empty beaches, and fish tacos soon washed away any anxieties we had. Baja is known as an off-roader's paradise, with miles and miles of dirt roads running along the Pacific. Surfers make their way down for its long lefts and white sand beaches. For us, it was a way to break in Sandy, to test her limits and learn how to maneuver a two-wheel drive vehicle in the sand, or how not to. We have been stuck here for the past maybe 3 hours. There was a rainstorm and this road has flooded. We have watched semi-trucks cross for the past hour and a half, and now it's gone down low enough that sedans and stuff are crossing, so we think Sandy can handle it. We found ourselves out in the wilderness without the warm blanket of a lifeline that seems ever so present in the United States, finally putting our gear, our van, and our psyches to the ultimate test. It wasn't always easy, and though we'd had a somewhat perfect track record stateside, we had to occasionally deal with the reality of any or all 3 of these elements breaking down on us. Baja had helped us transition into international van living. Baja was a warm-up, but the rest of the country would prove to be much more. More people, more culture, more adventure. And to save all the lives you got to envision, the fiery crash, it's just a formality. When I start explaining, so not to mortality. Before you get on a plane. After an 18-hour ferry ride that brought us across the Sea of Cortez, Mazatlan met us with a wall of humidity. It was obvious that we were out of the desert and into the tropics. I don't think we knew it, but Baja had worn us out. We were exhausted. After a week and a half of salt water, sweat, and dirt, we needed to find a place to clean up, rest, and reconnect. What was that you were going to say? Word of mouth led us to the Funky Monkey, a hostel in Mazatlan that was willing to trade photo and video work for a few nights of air conditioning. What was instantly striking about Mazatlan was that it seemed to be culturally deeper than anything on Baja. Baja was new by Mexican cultural standards, still just springing up out of the desert, but the mainland, that was a whole different story. Here we found town squares, Catholic churches, and the footprint of ages of ancient civilization. From Mazatlan, we said goodbye to the Pacific and headed inland, making our way to Mexico City. The familiar feeling of nervousness and excitement was back. It's becoming a feeling that we can depend on. It's a feeling we've grown to love because it's the pure, distilled sensation of adventure. We realized realized that simply pulling off the road onto an empty beach to camp wasn't really an option anymore. But that turned out not to be much of an issue. Actually, for a while, we didn't have to worry about camping at all. We were getting invited to stay with people everywhere we turned. Instead of the perpetuated stereotypes of bribe-hungry cops and thieving cartels, we found Mexico to be full of warm smiles and open arms. Its diverse landscapes and cultures left us in constant awe. We dropped Parker off in Mexico City so he could catch a flight home for a wedding, and the three of us trekked on. We had a week before Parker flew back down into Cancun, which seemed doable from back in the States when the reservations were made. However, after spending time down here, we had a much better idea of how long it actually took to get from one place to another, and that Cancun was really far from Mexico City. On this leg of the journey, a very different dynamic was thrown into our lives. We found ourselves picking up the pace in a major way, spending our entire days driving and our nights looking for places to camp before sunset, only to wake up the next day and do it all again. We watched as half the country floated by through the windows of our van and were sometimes saddened by the fact that we didn't have enough time to go out and explore it all. Time and finances running out, we knew we'd have to get comfortable with the fact that although we would see an incredible scope of land on this trip, exponentially more of it would be left behind. It was a difficult lesson, but a necessary one. When traveling, if you never become resilient to this notion, then you'll never be able to fully appreciate the moment. And what we had in that moment was a beautiful stretch of land, no matter how fast we were driving through it. We arrived in Cancun just in time to pick up our long-lost friend from the airport. With Parker back, the Vanajeros family was whole again, but there was a new obstacle hanging over our heads. It was finally time to bid farewell to the familiarity we had gained in Mexico, and once again, enter parts unknown. As we found ourselves at the Mexico-Belize border, we remembered that if we had always chosen to let our fears govern our decisions, we probably never would have made it out of Montana in the first place. We'd probably be sitting at our desks or behind a counter somewhere imagining what it would be like to get in a van and drive to South America. But we weren't sitting at those desks. We weren't behind those counters. We were in that van, and Belize was waiting for us.